Hello, today is July 20th, 2021. My name is Leslie Torres. I am interviewing Debra Torres for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mrs. Torres, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archives will archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation you are willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. So because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So I'll ask you a series of questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Number 1, do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at UTRGV University Library?
Yes.
Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes.
As you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it to UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members, so that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes.
On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
No.
Thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives. I look forward to what you will say in the interview questions I will now ask. So to begin, Deborah, thank you for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are valuable to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and the Voces Project. Particularly for us at UTRGV Special Collections, we are committed to preserving the stories of Mexican Americans and Latinos from South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, and those who work closely with these populations during this COVID-19 pandemic. Because you are a human resources business partner at UTRGV, and because you are a mother, sister, and daughter who is knowledgeable of the ways COVID-19 has affected others in her inner circle, I know you have many meaningful stories and experiences to share on how COVID-19 has impacted these roles you carry out in your life. So before I ask you to share stories about your life in this pandemic, tell us, who is Debra Torres?
As you mentioned, I'm an HR business partner here at UTRGV. I've been with the university since 2013. I am married and I have 2 daughters. I guess that's it.
Okay, so the first question I want to ask you is, when did you first hear about COVID-19 and how did you learn about it? Through TV, social media, etc.
I'm sure I learned just as everyone else back in March 2020, right? Yeah, the news outlets and word of mouth was my primary source of knowledge.
Okay, and what was your first reaction to the information about COVID-19?
Uncertainty, right? Just like everyone else, I'm sure. not really sure if it's something to take seriously or if something that it is real serious. Confusion, a little bit of fear probably. What does this mean for all of us? Yeah, just generally, confusion.
And at what point did you realize this pandemic was a serious life-altering event, or do you not think it's serious, and why?
At what point did I think that it was serious? Is that your question?
Yes.
Probably later on that month in March when we first started learning about the deaths and how rampant and quickly it was spreading. Not to mention the response of the world as far as ensuring everyone stays home and lockdowns and things like that. And, those eerie pictures of empty streets and things like that, that's when we kind of took pause and said this is a really serious thing. And yes, I do think it is a serious thing.
Okay. And over the last few months, what news media, social media, or other sources do you rely on to keep you informed about coronavirus?
Generally at home we watch ABC, so that would be our main source of news when they would come on.
Okay. And can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and any of its variants? And likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about this new coronavirus?
To be honest, I don't know much about it aside from what I learned on the news, which is how, like, for example, how it spreads, what you can do to best protect yourself from receiving it, the vaccinations. What I don't know is just as I mentioned, the uncertainty of it all, these variants and stuff like that. I'm not quite familiar with infectious diseases, so like what happens after this variant? Are we gonna be expecting more variants? Are we gonna need like shots every year, just like the flu? It's just a big ball of unknown for me.
And can you tell me what you know about the various vaccines available to the public, and how do you feel about these vaccines?
I've learned that they're effective, right? As long as you take them, and especially what seems right now at the point we're at, that they are individuals who've received both vaccines are not being infected by the variant, or if they are, they're being infected at very low rates. So what I know is that they are effective. I do know they get people sick sometimes. Like me, I got sick after my second dose. But it was worth it, right? One day of sickness is better than, serious illness. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
And how do you feel about these vaccines?
Just as I stated, I feel that they're effective, and I feel like everyone should take one. I think you mentioned maybe like my concerns about the vaccinations was one of the concerns. Again, I'm not familiar with, infectious diseases or vaccinations or the production of them, but the haste that they were created kind of concerned me. And the fact that we were injecting ourselves with a pretty unknown, medicine or the disease was unknown itself. So it was just kind of, that was concerning to me.
Okay. And do you have a vaccination story you would like to share with me now, or perhaps later in this interview?
No, it was pretty uneventful, my vaccination.
Okay. And do you have do your family members hold the same beliefs as you about COVID-19, or are there some who take it more seriously or more lightly?
I think the duration of this point in time, or like the duration of this COVID-19 since March, I think it's varied, right, through my family members. I think there are points we took it more seriously, and then there are points we became kind of laxed, and then again we become serious. So it just kind of depends. I think our reaction depended on the external stimuli. For example, before we realized how quickly it spread and the death toll had climbed so high, prior to learning that information, maybe treated it less seriously, more like a flu type of thing. But then when everything got locked down, we took it more seriously. And then again, when everything started opening up again, that kind of, so in my opinion, I think it varied depending on what was going on.
Okay, and for these next set of questions, I'd like to talk about how you've seen COVID-19 affect family members and friends. So firstly, can you share with me in general how many members are in your family and who are they to you?
Just a second. Okay, can you repeat that, please?
So can you share with me in general how many members are in your family and who are they to you?
In my immediate family, I have three other individuals. I have my husband and I have my two daughters. So total makes us four.
What was your immediate family's reaction to COVID?
My immediate, well, like I said, at the very beginning, we, took a little while to take it seriously. But for the most part, we took it seriously and got our vaccinations as soon as we could. Would it be a possibility to pause this?
Yes. Okay, so next, did your family follow the stay-at-home period of last March and April of 2020? And if so, what was this like for you and your family?
Yes, with the exception of my husband, who is considered an essential employee where he works. My daughters were home doing school from home remotely, and I was also working remotely. And we don't have like an office space in our home, so it was kind of crowded at first before we were able to get situated and make space in my daughter's rooms to place their laptop and have a seat and have kind of an area where they could work out of. So there was some adjustment, but it was okay.
Did you guys continue to quarantine after the stay-at-home period? And why or why not?
We did for the most part, with the exception of, maybe picking up some food or going to the grocery store. Or sometimes we did go over to like my parents' home. But we were definitely not as active. I would say maybe 10% of what we did before.
Okay, and can you describe what kind of changes your household made to protect the family from possible COVID infections?
I cleaned more. I used disinfectant a lot more, like in the living room and things like that. Would wipe down the remote controls. Other than that, that's pretty much the measures we took.
Okay, and did your family change the way you socialized when you went out in public? And if so, how?
Well, actually, we did, because it was mandated that way. So once things started becoming more relaxed, if you would go to a restaurant, everything's kind of like every other table. When you would wait in line at some business, you'd have to be 6 feet apart. So yeah, it did change the way we socialized. We didn't go to friends' houses. If we did, maybe like once or twice out of the entire period. There was a point where my husband did travel to see family, but even then, stopping at convenience stores and things like that, ensuring that we had our masks on and kind of staying away from people. So yeah, I guess we just became more wary in public, right? When people are around us. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And so you mentioned that you did work from home during the pandemic. So can you explain for how long you worked from home and what this transition was like?
So we were mandated to work from home, and I may get the dates off because I don't really remember, but we began mid-March. I think it was the week after spring break when they sent everyone home. And the only individuals allowed on campus were essential workers. I worked from home probably until July or August. And again, because I did not have an office space in my home, it was a challenge for me to complete my work. And my productivity, I felt, was kind of lessening. So the desk space was more preferable to me. So when they allowed a minimum amount of people coming to campus, I took advantage of that, and I became kind of the person on deck here on campus.
Okay, and as you mentioned, your husband was employed as an essential worker. Were you worried that he could potentially infect the household from work interactions, and why or why not?
So no, because in his role, he was actually working independently, and the fact that the rest of the employees in his area in the building really that he was working at were all working from home. So there were times he had a lot of responsibilities because he was the only one in the building. So I was not concerned that he was going to, bring anything home.
Okay, and prior to this interview, we talked about how for a certain amount of time you stayed away from your parents since they are elderly and have underlying conditions. So what was this experience like for you and your family to be away from them for so long? And if you remember how long you can say that too.
I think it was, especially when it first started, it must have been for like 3 or 4 months, because we typically visit them once a week, right? That's kind of like a traditional thing. So we ceased that for a while. And it was a challenge only because it was a routine and getting to see them and things like that. But at the same time, it wasn't really that difficult for me, because understanding that it was like protecting them, right? And protecting ourselves too. So it was for the best, I felt, all the way around.
So on that note, how did the pandemic impact family traditions, customs, and holiday celebrations? So for example, did you celebrate birthdays and Christmas differently? Did you have a traditional Thanksgiving, or did you celebrate in different ways during the pandemic?
I guess, yes, it changed, obviously. And as an example, on Christmas Eve, we had to, my mom's home, and she likes to celebrate Christmas Eve, with the tamales and all that stuff, and invite extended family over, and it's, good group of people. However, this year it was limited to, just the 4 of my immediate family and my parents, which was 6 people. And my mom did invite another couple, which is my cousin and his girlfriend. But that was the extent of it. It was a very small gathering, quiet, very different.
Okay, and if you attended any weddings, graduations, or funerals, can you please share with me how the pandemic made these events different from pre-pandemic times?
I have not attended any of those events.
Okay. So this next set of questions focuses on your stories and experiences as a human resources business partner at UTRGV during the COVID-19 pandemic. So firstly, can you explain when your workplace reacted to the news of COVID-19 and began enacting precautions for their workers?
In fact, well, again, when it began, March, a little of the week after spring break, I believe, and the university took immediate measures to ensure the safety of students and staff and faculty, having everyone work from home. And that was the very primary thing that we did right before, so we could figure everything out. Safety was number one to the university, and so working from home was initial.
And so because you work in human resources, you directly work with faculty and staff members when they need different forms of assistance. So can you describe the typical kinds of issues you dealt with and role you played before the pandemic took place?
Before the pandemic took place, so I work in employee relations. We deal with a number of issues and policies and things like that for faculty and staff. So I can see anything from, guidance regarding direct reports, supervisors who want guidance for direct reports and how to manage them, to ADA workplace accommodations, to workplace investigations, and policy interpretation. We do a whole lot of stuff. So yes. that's what we would do.
Okay. And so since the pandemic has started, how has your role changed? Are there new concerns from faculty and staff that you must address?
Yeah, so what I can speak to is generally there is requests to work from home, which is something that we are learning to become accustomed to, and we're working towards it. However, working from home was something that was not necessarily a traditional thing before the pandemic. However, the pandemic kind of changed the paradigm a bit. So the university, is ensuring that we can accommodate as much as we can. However, it's still a work in progress. We're still learning as we go. But I would say that the concern from humans, right? The staff and faculty and students, they're humans, and their main concern is coming back to campus and being possibly exposed or being in crowds, right? The students coming, I guess working with and providing guidance regarding those concerns are definitely new and abundant.
So can you explain how specifically the Human Resources Department altered its operations to fit the changing needs of faculty and staff as COVID-19 developed in 2020?
So yes, so we, obviously we became available, via computer, right, to assist them. I guess, can you reframe your question? I'm not really.
So how did your department, Human Resources, adapt to all the changes that came as COVID-19 developed last year, like with the university policies and how they did things?
So yeah, so initially, again, working from home. Secondly, we wanted to ensure that, like for example, student employees, they maintained employment. It became a challenge because typically student employees don't necessarily complete assignments that are available, like that are, via computer, like perhaps they're answering telephones or they are filing. So one of the challenges that we worked with is working with supervisors to ensure that our students stay employed during this uncertain time. So what we did is we worked with supervisors to be creative, right? And to develop assignments that they could work on from home. For example, whatever department they were working in, tying that assignment directly to the department to enrich their learning experience with the department and within their position. Or we also assisted them with e-learn trainings that we have available online to enhance their professional development, which is of course our priority always with our student employees. So, kind of just sitting around the table and talking with supervisors and leadership to determine best course of action and kind of picking each other's brains. And it was really a meeting of the minds. I mean, it was an unprecedented period. We really didn't, we didn't have training on this or anything like that. So it was about working together to come up with solutions that work best for everyone.
Okay, and in our pre-interview, you explained to me that the Human Resources Department were a part of a COVID response team called Roundtable that recorded live Q&As for faculty and staff. So can you describe to me what other departments made up this team and if you were ever a part of it? And additionally, how often were these recorded meetings held?
So those roundtable meetings the purpose of them is to provide a facilitation of conversation, like you said, question and answers regarding returning to work on campus. So there were various guests on these roundtables or expert speakers. For example, an individual from School of Medicine would join when they were available to answer any, medical related questions. At times we had a facilities individual at the roundtable to answer to any type of, building issues, cleanliness as far as disinfection, anything that they could speak to. An HR representative was there, or multiple HR representatives were there to answer any questions. I know our team, we handle, like I said, workplace accommodations. Our team, one of us were always available to respond to any questions regarding workplace accommodations. So it was just an effort of subject matter experts to come together and to listen to the questions that staff and faculty may have, and to try to provide them any guidance or answer any questions that we were able to.
Okay, and can you recollect any common questions or standout questions that were voiced in these meetings?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to, as I previously stated, the concern of the return of large population of students and staff and faculty coming back to campus, right? So ideally, or like at least, you know, what we know right now is that a lot of people are going to start to return back to normal this coming academic year, or at least as far as we know. And the concern is, you know, especially like in large populous areas. So think of student union, right? Where students gather at the library, you know, the rec center, large open spaces, but lots of students, lots of traffic. So how are we going to manage that? How can we, I guess, protect ourselves, right? Regarding, you know, any kind of crowd control. And typically, you know, just like if you're at Walmart or anywhere else, you know, the recommendations, you know, that we have with wearing the mask and getting your vaccinations and stuff like that is still, it's still prevalent, but at the same time, again, coming together and having this discussion, how can we solve this problem? What are your concerns? Is really what the point of that was.
Okay, so now now it's July 2021. Are these meetings still being held?
So I think the last meeting that was held was probably a few weeks ago. I don't know if there's one up and coming. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, and so I understand the university is allowing a lot more students and more staff and faculty on campus this upcoming fall. So are there still being concerns voiced by staff and faculty that you're aware of?
Yeah. I mean, I think the amount of concerns have lessened, but yes, they still exist.
Okay. Okay, and so how did your department answer to the growing numbers of faculty and staff needing to work from home?
So right now, right, as of right now, the recommendation, well, it's not a recommendation, the guidance that we provide is to discuss it with their department heads and see what's possible based on operational need. There are several departments on campus and each department does something unique. You know, some are student facing, some are not, some are technical, some are not. It just totally depends. And so the decision, right, or at least the initial decision would be up to the department to see if it's a possibility, if it's okay, if it's allowable, are they able to function, you know, you do the essential functions of their job from home, to kind of use their discretion to make that determination and see if that could be worked out.
Okay, and you don't need to go into detail, but was it common for employees to dispute what their department head like said was good for them, or like how they use their discretion if they didn't agree? Was it often that they would come to you guys at Human Resources?
Yeah, so if they were unable to come to some sort of agreement based on operational need, then yes, then it's having that dialogue and that discussion. It's an interactive process with the department and with the employee to see what we can do to make it possible. And of course, if for some reason they're asking to work from home due to, you know, a health condition, we may explore other options such as an accommodation, a workplace accommodation, or possible leave options if, they're not able to work from home. So yeah, the next level would be us, and then we would again table it and talk about it and see what we can do to get what the employee needs.
Okay, and so would you say that the workplace accommodations went up since COVID became more pressing in the Rio Grande Valley?
Actually, no, because I think they kind of stayed the same, only because the requests that we would get normally for on campus, for example, an ergonomic chair or something like that, stuff that's here, they lessened so much. So it kind of evened itself out,
Okay.
in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, and in our pre-interview, you mentioned that UTRGV, I don't remember if you said it was human resources or another department, but basically that a list of essential workers was established when everyone was first forced to work from home. So can you explain how and when did human resources or UTRGV decide what an essential worker on campus was, and what accommodations needed to be made for these essential workers?
So the essential worker list was developed by HR, but not within my area. So I'm not familiar with what the vetting process was. But what I do know though is that essential workers were determined by essential functions of their job, also the operational need. So as an example, there are positions here on campus that operate 24/7, and they need someone on deck like at all times. And so those individuals, for example, were provided essential essential worker letters. They were emailed to them. So that's how the employee would know that they're an essential worker and they need to work. But I don't know if you recall, another purpose of those letters were during the lockdown phase when we had curfews and things like that, and we weren't able to be driving around after 10 a.m. or whatever, 10 p.m. or whatever. The police officers were pulling individuals over and requesting documentation that they were an essential worker. So that was another function of the letter in the event, we needed to provide proof of why we were out wandering around or whatnot. So yeah, it was interesting.
Okay. And I understand you also had the task of hiring and managing a student employee once you began working from home. So did the hiring process change at all? And also, can you explain to me how you adapted to managing a student employee while never meeting them in person?
So I hired a student employee or an intern prior to COVID occurring. So she was already a student employee or an intern here within the department. After her assignment ended, we did not hire another. Oh, we did actually, I'm sorry. We did hire one for a short period of time, but it was extremely challenging to have her on campus and me coming on campus. So that was short-lived. But yeah, okay. So going back to the first, I just would like to speak on the managing became challenging. And as I mentioned prior in the interview, how we assisted departments to be creative to find assignments for student employees. I had to do the same thing for this student worker, right? So she was working from home, and to fulfill the required 19 hours a week, or however many weeks that she needed during that week because of the internship, the calculation of that and determining how many assignments to give her and things like that was a challenge. Yeah, it was tough. And then you don't see it face to face anymore. So it's kind of like Zoom or phone calls or Skype, and the interaction changed, and it definitely was something to get used to.
Okay. And did you have to become more, I don't know about tech savvy, but more familiarized with these online platforms in order to adapt to helping your student employee?
Yeah, so we didn't really use Zoom and all these other meeting platforms before we use Skype most of the time, but most of our meetings were face to face, right? So it's just kind of far few in between, unless someone was out of in Brownsville, or we're different campuses or whatnot. So yeah, I had a learning curve as far as the different types of the Zooms and the Teams, and there's other ones that other people use, and yeah, and well, again, so it was just challenging, not only for the student employee, managing her, but it was also just challenging in general. I realized my internet connection at home was not good when I had to work from home, because I kept dropping, or no one can hear me, or like whatever, so I had to fix that. And then yeah, well, that's all.
Okay, and so in your position, and you've had it for how many years now as a business partner?
Have had it for 4 years.
Okay, so for the past 4 years, your role has been to work with so many other people on campus. So since the pandemic has happened, and you and everyone else on campus has had to adapt to new technology and new ways to talk to individuals, have you noticed that it's made things easier, like attending meetings easier, or getting in touch with people is a lot more quick, or has there been downsides to this change, or like how would you say transferring online has changed how you socialize in your workplace?
So I think at this point, we've gotten really comfortable and familiar with utilizing Teams. So for example, although my team, so I have 2 other individuals in the employee relations, my coworkers, are working from home, we've become very familiar and comfortable with just simply going to Teams and either messaging each other, or just kind of calling each other and having a discussion face to face, as we are right now. I think at first it was difficult to get used to, because we were so used to having 90% of our meetings, or 95% of our meetings in person. So I think now it's maybe improved, right? It's kind of expanded the availability of individuals. Like for example, if I'm provided the option, to work from home, on occasion, let's say, for example, I need a repair done at my home. Previously, the first course of action would be take personal leave, right? So now there's a possibility of taking my laptop home and still, being productive and getting work done, attending meetings and doing all the stuff, while I need to be home because I'm getting a repair done at my home. So I think it's expanded the possibilities, the availability. Although we're not meeting face to face and going to lunch anymore together, I think it still works.
Okay, and going back to your student employee, since I kind of went off track, how did the roles of your student employee change during the pandemic, or due to the pandemic?
As I stated, the face-to-face thing was a challenge at first, because we it's kind of like a hands-on experience. So whenever I, let's say there's a workplace investigation, I like to sit with them and talk to them about it, talk about policies, have them draft up letters, or any type of, like an intake, for example, that describes what happened, and then we'll kind of go over it. I'll proofread it. I think one of the challenges for me was also that because they were at home, I couldn't easily just email them that information, because it wasn't a UTRGV issued device. So confidentiality was a concern of mine, whether it was realistic or not. But so that kind of stops. So a lot of the e-learn professional development and things like that is where I focused on. Assignments regarding the history of HR, different areas of HR, things like that. So yeah, we figured it out, but yeah, it was tough at first, because the primary things that we have them do, it had to come to a halt, right, and have them do something else.
Okay, and so you mentioned that you began working back on campus last summer or last fall. So can you describe some of the changes you've seen enforced the past year because of the pandemic, such as required PPE, personal protective, yeah, or social distancing, etc.
Yeah, so UTRGV established, a COVID response team, and they developed this wonderful website that provided up-to-date guidelines from the CDC. So when the masks were required, that was updated. When the state decided not to require masks anymore, however, we recommend there's masks. All the information was there, so that was very accessible to employees or just general students and things like that. They enforced the 6 feet between individuals. They also made sure that that the university was disinfected appropriately. I mean, based on observation, I noticed that all like the water fountains were taped up and things like that, to, I guess, prevent the spread of germs. So yeah, there was a lot of, in alignment with every other business probably in the state. They ensured that protective measures were in place for sure.
Okay, and so now to close, I'll ask you some final questions. So firstly, are you satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in Edinburgh and Hidalgo County?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, and are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by Texas and Governor Greg Abbott?
No, not really.
Would you like to elaborate or no?
I mean, I think it's just frustrating. Well, I guess the swiftness of I guess, removing or increasing the percentage of individuals in restaurants per se. And I know there's a flip side to the fact that, the economy had hit it real bad. So ensuring that the percentage of, I guess, occupants and businesses and stuff increased was important. However, I think it was just too soon. And also the non-requirement for masks was probably too soon as well. And in my opinion, I think it wouldn't have done anything negative to extend it for a further period of time, just for people's safety measures. But yeah.
Okay, and were you satisfied with the 2020 national response to COVID-19 led by former President Donald Trump and his administration?
No.
Okay, and are you satisfied with the current national response to COVID-19 led by President Biden and his administration?
I honestly don't know what the Biden administration is doing for the response to COVID now.
Okay. And if you had the power to respond to COVID-19 with policies, laws, or workplace decisions, what would you do differently, if anything?
I think we handled it very well. I think the university really took care of its community, right? In regards to particularly to ensuring everyone's working from home, being extremely flexible as far as the staff side goes and the student side, right? Because of all the classes that went remote. I appreciated the fact that they developed a team. They developed a team of experts to ensure the safety of the university community, in regards to, disinfection, in regards to individuals being on campus. They provided masks, they provided disinfecting, you could order some disinfectant for your desk or whatever. I mean, everything was very available to employees to ensure that they felt safe. In addition, I think that the School of Medicine response with the vaccination for the UTRGV community was also great. I just feel like the university took care of its community, which is great.
And lastly, are there any other stories or experiences you would like to share with me that I have not asked about?
Oh, well, yeah, actually, when you mentioned about the city of Edinburgh, and I mentioned that, yeah, for the most part, I think that they did well with the response. I really did. I wanted to add that I appreciated the fact that the city responded by providing incentives to stimulate the local businesses and things like that. So providing like a gift card, for example, to spend at local businesses, I think was pretty cool. Like they're, just making sure that the local businesses stay afloat during this time of during the time of the pandemic. I think that was awesome, but that's it.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing your stories and experiences with Voices of a Pandemic and UTRGV Special Collections. But yeah.
All right, thank you.